Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of Plant Liker Podcast. I'm Steve Rogenbuck, your host.
Oh, here's another day where I appreciate plant life. Fuck you. I love plants.
Plant Liker, wow, the very beginning. I'm recording this in the first hour of 2016, so this is a beginning in more than one way. I had the idea for something called Plant Liker for quite a while now. I came up with that name last summer, and I was like, will I make some kind of blog, or maybe a Twitter thing, or maybe a video thing, or maybe a podcast? And here it's starting off as a podcast, but it may evolve into other things as well. I don't know. With my podcast last year, what I ended up doing was sort of experimenting. Doing different things and trying to figure out what would work, and I think this format that I've arrived at, a sort of Q&A based format, will work for me pretty well. Plant Liker as a name is sort of referring to eating a plant-based diet, a whole foods plant-based diet, a vegan diet, essentially. And so I will talk about that to some degree on the show. Probably every show will have some stuff about eating a vegan or plant-focused diet, and I want to share some excitement and enthusiasm and just some personal experiences about that stuff, answer people's questions about that stuff, but I also want to keep it very free to basically talk about whatever the fuck else I want to talk about and whatever else people are interested in hearing from me about. I feel that for me, the way that I've made my art so far that has felt very rewarding to me is that I allow myself to basically do anything I want with it and go anywhere that my heart feels like it needs to take me. And so that's what I'm doing with this, even though it may make it a little bit less appealing for somebody who doesn't know who the fuck I am, but they just want to follow a vegan podcast. Maybe this won't be the ideal one for you, but it does have some vegan content, and it will have other content as well. Nice! Well, you know, what's kind of funny is that I am so interested in giving you a good listen, a good podcast, that it is boosting up my energy levels just to make myself record this. It's kind of funny because the last couple days I've been in not the best mood. You know, I mean, I'm not dying over here or anything, but it's kind of like I've been pretty low energy. I've had some disempowering thoughts sort of, you know, kind of knocking me down, and I was meaning to get another new video out before the end of 2015 so that I would catch back up to my weekly schedule before the end of the year, and I couldn't get myself to get it done because I was just in sort of a low mood the past couple days. But it's kind of funny, I start recording this, and I'm like, I have to entertain my people. I have to make something that is not boring and shitty to listen to. So I'm trying to give you some high energy now, and it's building me up. So thank you. I want to say episode 1 of Plant Liker Podcast is sponsored by garbanzo beans in general. Okay, I don't have an actual paid sponsor, and I probably will not for a long time, if ever, on here, but garbanzo beans have sponsored me with their great taste and their great nutrition, you know? And I want to say something. One, if you're not familiar with garbanzo bean eating directly from the can, you should check it out because it's actually known as slamming the bonzos. Some of you have already heard me talk about this, eating garbanzo beans directly from the can. It's the way that we live now. It's the way for us to live in the new year. 2016 is the year of slamming the bonzos, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend, eating beans directly from the can. Beans are in a very interesting position nutritionally and economically and in life because beans are known as a pretty cheap food, right? Pretty basic food, pretty common person food, it's not a fancy food by any stretch of the imagination. Rice and beans is like the cliche cheap vegan meal, but it's actually, beans are extremely nutritious as well. They're not just cheap. They're not just easy filling cheap calories. They're actually extremely nutritious calories. Lots of fiber. the most fibrous foods, beans, pretty much. And then they have other as well, antioxidants. A lot of them are packed with different types of antioxidants, depending which bean, I believe. Oftentimes calcium, oftentimes iron, potassium, zinc. I don't know all the specific amounts for different bean types, but I know that beans are actually very rich. Joel Furman, this doctor who talks about eating a very nutrient-dense diet, eating a lot of the most nutrient-dense foods, he categorizes beans as one of the top nutrient-dense categories of food. Vegetables are number one by far, and then fruits and legumes, the category that includes beans, are next down. So legumes are actually very powerful, very good for us, and they're pretty cheap as well, usually cheaper than fruit. So boom, I do highly recommend you get into the beans. Of course, some people, it might not work as well with their digestive tract or something, different types of fiber, but I think that's pretty rare. I think for most people, beans are a very good option. And shouts out to Garbanzo Beans. I'm thanking them so much for being the sponsor today on the show. Okay, so one other thing I want to mention, because this is the first episode of Plant Liker Podcast, is that if you don't already know, I did another podcast before this. It was called Read Poetry and Eventually Die. It started out as a mainly poetry-focused podcast, episode 1 through 8. I was basically focusing on the poetry of one individual poet per episode. I would read some of their poems, talk about different themes in their work, different stuff like that. And then in the last 5 episodes 9 through 13, I tried different things. I sort of evolved into this Q&A format that will be used to start Plant Liker. And those are currently archived on YouTube.com. So if you just search in Read Poetry and Eventually Die on YouTube, you can find all those episodes. And so that's in case you haven't listened to those and you're hungry for more. Those are pretty decent. I especially like the last 5, but even the first ones, especially if you like poetry, but even if you don't normally like poetry, I try to bring, elements of poetry that I think are very engaging. So you might like it more than you normally like poetry anyway, because nice. Another quick mention before I get into some Q&A quick is that I'm going to try to not edit this much at all, maybe none. So boom, I'm trying to give you the real, straight from my horse's mouth, that's me, and also, saving me some time so that I don't, because when I start editing stuff, I get to become a perfectionist, and then I start taking out all the little all the little spaces between everything I say and all the ums and whatever, and I just start deleting shit like crazy, and then it sounds like not even natural speaking patterns in the edited version, and I'd rather just give you straight from my horse, straight from me, and my heart to you. So thank you so much for listening. This is episode 1 of Plant Liker Podcast. The first question that I will ever answer on here. Right now, I'm going to address this. Somebody asked me, what are your tips for making it particularly easy to transition to a vegan diet? If you're not, and if you're for the first time, well, my first tip is, if possible, convince a friend to go vegan with you, or find a friend who's already vegan, or if you can't do one of those, then convince somebody to at least explore some of it with you, to make some recipes with you on the weekends, or to go with you to a vegan restaurant in your area, or find, at least if you can't even get somebody to do that with you, try to at least find some other vegans online who you can follow, and maybe try to talk to some of them online, maybe build an online friendship with some other vegans, something. one of these options or many of them so that you don't feel alone in it and that you don't feel that you're the only one and that you can share your experiences with other people, get tips from other people, find even, vegan YouTubers or people on Instagram. Just search the vegan hashtags on Instagram, vegans of Instagram, whatever, different hashtags. Find people who are posting their meals and you can take inspiration from them and comment and maybe build up friendships with some of them who you like especially, or, who knows, whatever it is. But just, I was very lucky because my brother was somebody who was also considering going vegan, and when I did it, he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it too." Then, he sort of took that moment to say, like, "Okay, if you're taking the if you're making the leap to veganism, I'm going to do it with you. I'm going to take this opportunity to do it with you." And we did it together. And so it was like we went to the store together and like, okay, how do we find out whether stuff is vegan or not? And we looked up stuff and we made recipes together. We made a bunch of vegan pizzas. We made vegan cake and all this different stuff, junk foods, whatever. It's not healthy, but it was part of, figuring out veganism, figuring out what it was and what it looked like. And really, it was really a big benefit to me having my brother be vegan with me, because we lived in the middle of nowhere, Michigan. We lived in rural Michigan. My dad's a farmer, and then I was going to college in Central Michigan University. Shouts out if anybody knows about it, but it's a pretty small town there too, and there's not many vegans, at least there wasn't at the time, and so we were very isolated other than each other, but we had each other, and that just helped so much. So if you can find any vegan friends or make vegan friends or convince a friend to try some aspect of it with you, even if they won't go 100% with you, it will definitely help, I think. The next thing that I would recommend is to get excited about the healthiest vegan foods, and there's many different ways to do veganism, and so obviously this is a preference thing, but for me, I've gotten more interested in vegan nutrition over the past year or two, and so now I want to really encourage people, like, you can look at, try making vegan pizzas and different things, but like really get excited about giving your body more of the healthiest foods in the world, and that's going to be vegetables number one, fruits and legumes, I think, as the runners up. You probably want to get a bunch of all three of those, as much as you can, and as much as you like and whatever, but it's really, I've found a joy in really knowing that I'm loving my body and giving my organs something that's going to help them so much. Thinking about, like, I made this tweet the other day or last month when I was saying, like, oh, my organs are going to be so excited when they find out we're having lentils for dinner. It's like sort of this way that, like, when you're eating nutritious food, it's like you're giving this great gift to your body that it's like, whatever you shove in your mouth, whatever you shovel in there, your body has to deal with the consequences. And so if you're giving yourself like tons of, like, you're smoking and drinking, giving yourself tons of junk food just endlessly, it's like, I just imagine like your stomach and your lungs or whatever just being like, oh my God, come on. Oh, Jesus Christ, you're giving us all, what the fuck is this shit? How are we supposed to work with this? And it's actually amazing. Your body is actually very forgiving and very, very remarkable. Most bodies are actually really remarkable at working with a shitty fast foods and all this. Like, it can tolerate a remarkable amount, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's fun to splurge once in a while. And some people who can't eat healthy for whatever reasons, it's very good that the human body can at least tolerate it for some time. But if you keep giving your body shit over time, it's gonna amount to problems. And same thing if you keep giving your body all the antioxidants, all the vitamins and minerals, all the water and the fiber that helps your body just like keep itself clean and running smooth and efficiently and healing itself and protecting against different disease and cancers. It's like, over time, that is so nice for your body. And I love to think about how it might make my organs feel if there are people almost inside of me, that they'd just be dancing, celebrating that I ate all these legumes and then I had a big salad, and they're just like so happy in there that I drank all this extra water today to help flush out the stuff. And that's one exciting angle that you can kind of add. If that doesn't work for you, that's fine, but that's one thing that I've found is kind of fun to encourage myself to eat more nutritious food, really thinking about being loving to my organs and giving them these foods that are the healthiest for us. And whole foods are the healthiest. There are different ways to supplement, and you might need to learn about different supplements that might work best for you. A lot of vegans need to supplement with something, whether it's usually B12, sometimes vitamin D or others, but focus on getting the healthy whole foods. That's where the health really is. A lot of times superfood supplements and stuff, they're not as healthy and effective to really give your body what you need as much as whole foods, because whole foods, it's all just packaged in this amazing way together, like different vitamins and minerals that have a synergistic effect when working together are packaged together in whole foods. And so if you eat carrots, that's very healthy for you with the beta carotene, the vitamin A. But if you eat vitamin A in a supplement, it is not healthy for you. It's been found out. That's just one example I think I used in an old podcast episode as well. But, and generally, just slam it home with the whole foods. Okay, sorry, that one took a little bit long. I just went ranting on for that about a little bit. Third thing that I would recommend is another preference thing, but I would recommend focus mostly on simple, nutritious meals that you can prepare at home easily. Now, that's obviously a preference of mine. So if you're somebody who loves to make elaborate recipes and you want to spend 2 hours in the kitchen making something remarkable, then you can do that. It's not really what I love to do personally, and so I don't really do that very much. But you can look, there's tons of vegan recipes on the internet. Type in anything, any food, and then vegan, and then recipe, and you'll find a variety of recipes of a vegan version of any different foods, and some of them will be better than others, but it's out there, and you can find your favorite vegan cookbook recipe, cookbook authors. There's much out there. I like really simple meals at home. Also, though, if you I don't go to restaurants that much, because I think it's an effing ripoff. I think it's actually a frickin' ripoff, because I've noticed, I can go to the grocery store, get $12 worth of food, especially if it's on staple foods that are going to last like multiple meals, and I can eat off $12 of groceries for multiple days, sometimes pretty healthy, pretty simple meals. But then if I go to a restaurant, I'm spending $12, and that's, one meal. I might not even have leftovers from it, and it's usually less healthy too. Of course, maybe it's fun to go out to eat once in a while, but I really try to not go out to eat that much. I focus on eating simple meals at home. Here's my one thing. If you do want to go out to vegan restaurants, there is a very good app or website that I would recommend. It's called Happy Cow. I'll probably talk about it in future episodes different times too, but Happy Cow, you can pull up GPS on your phone if you have the app version, and it'll show you what restaurants are nearest to you right now that are vegan friendly or have good options or totally vegan, and they also have a website version that is totally free where you can put in the zip code or whatever, and it will give you all the options in that area. So that's a pretty good app, but I try not to go out that much. What I do is I stay home, and most of my meals are pretty simple, and a lot of times they're based around I'll have like a starch, like rice. I eat a lot of rice, especially earlier this last year. I ate a lot of rice. Rice is one of the cheapest foods, but also potatoes are very cheap. Potatoes have a little bit more nutrition. Sweet potatoes have even more than that, but I like the white potatoes more. Or corn or some other like cheap starch, and then you can combine it with some green vegetables or combine it with some beans. Just make these like simple meals. A lot of times I had a lot of rice and beans last year. Beginning of last year, I was eating as cheap cheap of a diet as I could, really. I was sort of trying to see how cheap I could get it, and I was eating rice and lentils all the time, and I liked it, but I could have put more greens in there. It would have been healthier, but that's just what I sort of saying. Like for breakfast, for example, I do oatmeal with bananas chopped up in it and a little cinnamon on top for extra antioxidants and flavor, But very simple, if you just load up the bananas and the oatmeal, you don't need to add any sugar or anything, so it's very healthy based on what I know. And very simple, cheap, oatmeal is cheap, bananas are pretty cheap. And also one last thing I would recommend in this category is that consider eating just fruit as a meal. It's something that a lot of people don't think of very much. I've been eating canned pineapple lately, and I'll just eat a lot of it, and it's kind of a whole meal sometimes, almost the amount I can eat of it, and it feels pretty good for me. But eating a lot of ripe bananas is a great thing. I've also eaten lots of a meal of like 7 oranges or something. It takes a while, but if you have something, eating it out in the sun or something, maybe listening to a podcast like this one that you love, or something else, an audiobook or music or whatever, it can be a good way to start your day sometimes, or take a lunch break that way, eating just a big amount of fruit, a bag of apples, get a 5-pound bag of apples or whatever, a 3-pound bag, I don't know, and just like sit outside eating them in the sun or something, or whatever, and that you can actually fill up sometimes, or at least like fill up for a few hours on just fruit, and that's a pretty simple, easy, and oftentimes quite affordable, depending on what fruit you choose, way to do it. Shouts out! 2016! Yeah, I'm lying down while recording this. It's pretty funny because usually I'd think to get more energy, I'd be walking around doing it, but tonight I'm lying down. Boom. Shouts out to my ex-cat, Buttons. Dead cat currently. But that was a cat of my childhood. Just seen a picture of him on the wall here. I'm at my mom's house. Very rare. I was home here for the holidays, but leaving tomorrow. Doing a show in Toronto. Very rare, because it was the cheapest airport to fly out of in the area of upstate New York area. So I was like checking Buffalo Airport, Syracuse Airport, Rochester Airport. I'm like, these are too expensive. I looked up Toronto Airport, and it was like to get flight home was cheaper than any of those. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to Canada, and then I'm going to fly back to Arizona. So that's some funny how that works sometimes. I thought, okay, so get a load of this. Is everybody excited to learn? I used to use Orbitz to get my plane tickets. It was just because that was the first place I ever used to get a plane ticket, and so I just thought, I'll just keep using this place. It compares different airlines. I probably wasted a lot of money on that site because Orbitz is not as good as some other sites I've recently learned. Because I was looking for plane tickets to get to Europe and back for this tour I'm doing in February, and I was seeing that the London to U.S. tickets are like, I was seeing like 600 one way was like the cheapest for most cities, or even higher, and I'm like, Jesus. I've seen cheaper than that. I checked other sites. I checked Skyscanner and Kayak and Google Flights, and I found much cheaper. Now, lately I've been using Skyscanner the most, and I found a flight home from London for $320 rather than $600 some through Orbitz. So major savings on that. I recommend Skyscanner, but especially I think those three, Skyscanner, Kayak, and Google Flights, are 3 good ones, and there's probably other ones that are good as well. Wow. Just wow. Oh yeah. Okay. My brother got a shop vac for Christmas. Y'all like shop vacs or what? Who here has absolutely fucking used a shop vac? They're these vacuums that can clean up. They're pretty brutal. They're pretty brutal vacuums. They can clean up. They can just suck up water or whatever you want with them. They're wet and dry vacs. Powerful, powerful vacs. And my brother got one, and it's sitting here next to me. The other question I'm going to answer on this episode is somebody asked, how do I find the line between being a preachy buzzkill and being likable? It's kind of an interesting question because I don't even know where people find me to fall on this line. One thing that was interesting is that recently I saw Jamie Kilstein do a talk in Orlando, Florida at this Central Florida Veg Fest. I was randomly in the area same time as him, and he was doing this talk, and I've followed his work for a while. He's a comedian and podcast host, but he talks about veganism and other political stuff, and he did this talk about veganism that I really liked. And one little part of it toward the beginning was that he said that he thinks preachy is the boring person's word for brave, I think was what he said. And so that was interesting. Just sort of like, sometimes if people call you preachy in a bad way, maybe that's not worth taking too seriously as a criticism. Maybe it's like, well, you're standing up for something. You're talking about something that you believe in, that you believe is important. You're taking a stand. That takes bravery and that takes heart, and that's not always bad. But I mean, I know what you mean, though. There is this practical concern, especially, with the other part you said, preachy buzzkill, And so one thing that I would say is that, maybe don't worry about it. Be whatever, speak your truth and whatever you find the truth to be. But one thing that I would point to that's kind of interesting is, like, I think being extremely critical of what's going on in the world right now and the way society is right now, that can include a lot of negative work, a lot of criticism and stuff, but it can also include a lot of positive talk as well, because we can talk about alternative visions for how things could be. Like, if you're fucking disgusted with all these TV shows that are on TV right now and how, problematic different aspects of them are, or offensive, or just, racist, or whatever it is, you could, talk about a TV show that you think is doing a lot better of a job as well, if you can find one. If you can find, one thing that I love is showing people the comedians who I think are doing a good job. I'd mentioned Jamie Kilstein, but two other comedians who I like maybe even more is Hari Kondabolu and Amar Rahman. They both talk about racism a lot, but they're also very genuinely funny as well, in my opinion. So very educational and very funny. And I've found Tig Notaro recently. I also like her comedy quite a bit. And it's like, it's really helpful if you find the examples of people doing something right. Lift those people up and celebrate those people, or celebrate the companies that are doing things in a way that is not destroying the environment, or think about the alternative world, even if it doesn't exist yet. What would you want it to be like? What should it look like? And sort of get, maybe, talk about that, get people inspired about how much better it could be and the better world that could be created. That could be very inspiring, and could pull people toward that new world and those new possibilities, rather than just pushing people out of the old one by critiquing it endlessly. I think that's a very interesting angle. I think it sometimes takes more work, I think, to find solutions. It can sometimes be easier to talk about what's wrong, sometimes harder to find the solutions. Or some people, though, it's their thing to critique what's wrong, and that's very valuable as well. Some people have that confrontational personality. They don't mind being a buzzkill. I think those people are very valuable. I think, that definitely has an important role. If somebody is brave enough to make themselves sort of this, putting themselves in the way and sort of saying this is wrong, like calling people out, that, can be very difficult confrontational work that requires a lot of bravery, but sometimes is very important. And so that can be very valuable, but also, bringing new visions that inspire people and make it so that it's not just endless negativity to be involved in that, in trying to change the world. That's something to think about. So shouts out. That's sort of what I'm trying to do with this podcast, or whenever I talk about veganism, is that, there's so much negative to talk about with the way the food system is right now, right? I mean, you could talk about the endless suffering of these different animals and the system and the human workers involved as well, and the nutrition that is just destroying so many people's health who are dying like way earlier than they need to and stuff. And it's horrible. And there's so much that sucks with it, but it's also like, well, we can also, think about, the potential for how much better it could be, and think about like, wow, carrots are so powerful. If we could just harness the power of carrots. Imagine if we could get carrots into more school lunches. Imagine if you walk down the street and instead of these fast food vendors and the food carts, there was actually fresh fruit that was affordable somehow. Wouldn't that be amazing? And like, how could we somehow get toward that? How could we somehow work on that? Or what are a step that we can take, and what are, I don't know. That's just one angle. Shouts out. Boom. Thank you for listening. This has been Plant Liker Podcast, episode number 1. It's 2016. It's time to fucking do it. Now I'm getting amped up. And now I started off sort of whiny baby a little bit on my inside at least. And now I'm jacked up a little bit. Hope I can keep this momentum, It's funny when you've been dealing with some lower moods or like low self-confidence or something, at least for me, it's been funny this last year. Whenever I get a burst of self-confidence or bursts of like, I can do this, it's like, oh my God, I hope it sticks around. Like, I just want to nourish this to keep this going, because I know how important it is for me to be able to contribute, and that if I don't have self-confidence and if I don't believe that I can, do something useful for y'all listening or other people who could be listening, then I won't, If I think that I suck, I am not going to create anything that's going to help people. But if I can find it in myself to believe in myself that I will create something that can help people and that can just make people have a better day, or, something, help people get excited about vegetables or whatever it is, that I think I actually can make something great, And so I'm trying to keep this self-confidence. We'll see what I can do with it, but 2016 is the year for me to make a shitload of internet content. I've committed myself to it, and even if I get in the low period of self-confidence or whatever it is, I'm going to try to push through, and I'm trying to commit myself to one video every week and one podcast episode every week, and I will realistically get behind on them perhaps, but I'm going to try to keep it around that. The podcast episodes, I'm going to try to keep the editing low, so I will definitely be able to bang those out quicker. Thanks so much. Send me questions. Send me topics that I should talk about. I do have a list of them, but I always want more. So, tweet at me or Facebook message me or steveroganbook@gmail.com. Send me. We're getting something started here with Plant Liker. I want to make this an actual thing. I know that it's going to start off with not that many listeners, because last year when I was doing the podcast, I didn't get that many listeners. But I think there's something valuable here. There are some people who are listening to my other podcasts, and even though I didn't do that many episodes, there's been people saying, start the podcast again. So I think I can do something good with this. Thanks for listening. Hail Satan, if you want to. No pressure. Bye.